In the vast, shimmering history of Hollywood, there are few figures who have managed to remain as enigmatic, as authentic, and as fiercely independent as Diane Keaton. She was the woman who redefined what it meant to be a leading lady, trading the tight-fitting gowns and coiffed hair of the silver screen for oversized men's blazers, baggy trousers, and a collection of hats that would make a haberdasher weep with joy. But beneath those layers of linen and wool lies a story of profound vulnerability and an almost defiant brand of self-reliance. Diane Keaton's life wasn't just a series of hit movies. It was a narrative about a girl from Santa Ana who spent her life looking for herself in the lens of a camera, the pages of a script, and the eyes of some of the most complicated men in cinema, only to realize that the most interesting person in the room had always been her.
Born Diane Hall in 1946, she grew up in the suburban sprawl of Orange County, California. Her father, Jack, was a real estate broker and civil engineer, while her mother, Dorothy, was a homemaker and amateur photographer. It was Dorothy who would become the central catalyst for Diane's creative spirit. Dorothy was a woman of quiet ambitions, winning the Mrs. Los Angeles pageant for homemakers, an event that left a young Diane transfixed. Seeing her mother under the spotlight, even in such a domestic context, planted a seed. Diane didn't just want to be seen. She wanted to understand the art of performance. She watched her mother constantly documenting their lives through a camera lens, a habit Diane would later adopt herself, turning her own life into a series of carefully composed frames. The transition from Diane Hall to Diane Keaton was born of necessity. When she joined the Screen Actors Guild, there was already a Diane Hall, so she took her mother's maiden name. This subtle shift marked the beginning of her reinvention. After a brief stint at Santa Ana College, she headed for the bright lights of Manhattan to study at the neighborhood playhouse under the legendary Sanford Meisner. New York in the late 1960s was a playground of revolution, and Diane was right in the thick of it. She wasn't the typical starlet. She was nervous, self-deprecating, and possessed a rhythmic, stuttering way of speaking that felt more like jazz than traditional acting. Her first major break came in 1968 when she was cast in the original Broadway production of Hair. In a move that signaled her lifelong commitment to her own comfort and boundaries, she famously refused to take her clothes off during the show's nude scene, despite the pressure. It was a small act of rebellion, but it established the Keaton brand. She would do things her way, or not at all. It was during this time that a young, fledgling filmmaker named Woody Allen saw her. He was looking for a lead for his play, Play It Again, Sam. And when Diane walked into the audition, he didn't just see an actress, he saw a muse. Their partnership would go on to define a decade of American cinema. But it began with a shared sense of neurotic humor and a mutual fascination with the absurdities of modern love. While her comedic timing was being honed on stage, Diane's film career took a sharp, dramatic turn that no one saw coming. In 1972, Francis Ford Coppola cast her as Kay Adams in The Godfather. On paper, Kay was the waspish outsider, the moral compass trying to pull Michael Corleone away from the darkness of his family business. In reality, Diane felt like an outsider on that set as well. Surrounded by the brooding intensity of Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, she often felt out of place, yet it was that very sense of being apart that made her performance so haunting. She played Kay with a quiet, mounting desperation, representing the audience's own growing horror as the man she loved transformed into a monster. The success of The Godfather made her a household name, but Diane was never comfortable with the trappings of a movie star. She lived in a modest apartment, continued to frequent thrift stores, and maintained a lifestyle that felt decidedly un-Hollywood. Her relationship with Al Pacino, which began during the filming, was a tempestuous affair that lasted on and off for nearly 2 decades. Pacino was the opposite of Woody Allen, intense, method-driven, and emotionally volatile. Diane found herself caught between these two titans of the industry, navigating a personal life that was as dramatic as the scripts she was reading. She would later describe Pacino as the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, but also someone who was perpetually out of reach, a man married to his craft above all else. The year 1977 changed everything. Woody Allen's Annie Hall wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural earthquake. The character of Annie was written specifically for Diane, hence the use of her real last name, Hall, and her nickname, Annie. The film captured the essence of their real-life relationship, the intellectual banter, the shared anxieties, and the bittersweet realization that sometimes people just drift apart. But it was Annie's wardrobe that truly shook the world. Diane showed up to set wearing her own clothes, the waistcoats, the wide-leg trousers, the ties, and those iconic glasses. The costume designer initially hated it, but Woody insisted she wear what she wanted. Suddenly, every woman in America wanted to look like Diane Keaton. She had dismantled the bombshell archetype and replaced it with something far more relatable and sophisticated: the intellectual tomboy. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress, cementing her status as the queen of the new Hollywood era. Yet, in typical Keaton fashion, she found the acclaim terrifying. She often spoke about feeling like a fraud, a recurring theme in her memoirs. Despite being the most influential woman in film at the time, she remained her own harshest critic, constantly questioning if she was enough for the pedestal the world had placed her on. As the 70s bled into the 80s, Diane sought to prove she was more than just Woody Allen's quirky sidekick. She took on roles that pushed her into darker, more complex territory. In Looking for Mr. Goodbar, she played a teacher who spends her nights cruising singles bars, a performance that was raw, sexual, and ultimately tragic. It was a jarring departure from the la-di-da charm of Annie Hall, showing a woman grappling with loneliness and the dangers of urban isolation. This period marked her transition into a serious, dramatic powerhouse, culminating in her role in Warren Beatty's epic Reds. Her relationship with Warren Beatty was the talk of the industry. Beatty was the ultimate Hollywood playboy, but in Diane, he found an intellectual equal who wasn't intimidated by his shadow. Filming Reds was an arduous process. Beatty was a perfectionist who demanded dozens of takes for every scene. The tension on set translated into a performance by Diane that was nothing short of luminous. She played journalist Louise Bryant with a fierce, burning intelligence, earning another Oscar nomination. But as with Pacino and Allen, the romance with Beatty eventually flickered out. Diane seemed to have a pattern of falling for brilliant, difficult men who were impossible to domesticate, perhaps because she herself was too singular to be tied down. By the late 1980s and early 90s, the roles for women in their 40s began to thin out, but Diane refused to fade into the background. She pivoted into directing, helming the documentary Heaven and various music videos, proving her eye for composition extended far beyond her own face. She also embraced the mother roles, but did so with her signature twist. In Baby Boom, she played a high-powered Tiger Lady executive whose life is upended by an unexpected inheritance: a baby. The film was a hit because it spoke to the burgeoning anxiety of the have-it-all generation, and Diane's physical comedy was sharper than ever. It was during this decade that she also starred in Father of the Bride alongside Steve Martin. While it was a more mainstream commercial project, it allowed Diane to showcase a grounded, maternal warmth that audiences hadn't seen before. She became the cinematic ideal of the modern matriarch: elegant, patient, and slightly eccentric. Off-screen, however, her life was taking a very different path. While her peers were settling into long-term marriages, Diane remained single. She began to focus on her passions outside of acting: photography, real estate, and architectural preservation. She started buying and restoring historic homes in Los Angeles, saving them from the wrecking ball and proving she had a visionary's touch for design. The most significant turning point in Diane's personal life came when she was 50 years old. In a move that surprised the world and perhaps even herself, she decided to become a mother. She adopted her daughter Dexter in 1996 and her son Duke in 2001. Diane has been refreshingly honest about this journey, admitting that she chose motherhood late because she had spent so much of her life in a dream of her own making. She realized that she didn't need a husband to create a family. This decision was the ultimate expression of her independence, a rejection of the traditional timeline, and a testament to her belief that it is never too late to start a new chapter. Raising children as a single mother in her 50s and 60s brought a new sense of groundedness to her work. She wasn't just acting for the art anymore. She was acting to provide and to show her children the value of a work ethic. This era saw her return to the spotlight in a massive way with The First Wives Club. Alongside Bette Midler and Goldie Hawn, she tapped into a collective female rage and humor that resonated with millions. The film became a feminist touchstone, proving that older women in Hollywood were not only viable, but were a force to be reckoned with at the box office. In 2003, Diane experienced a career resurgence that few actresses her age ever get to enjoy. Nancy Meyers wrote, "Something's Gotta Give" specifically for her. Playing Erica Berry, a successful playwright who finds unexpected love later in life, Diane delivered a performance that was both hilariously uninhibited and deeply moving. The scene where she cries hysterically while typing her play became an instant classic. It earned her another Oscar nomination and a Golden Globe, but more importantly, it made her a romantic lead again at the age of 57. The film featured a famous nude scene, not the kind she had refused in Hair, but a brief, tasteful, and incredibly vulnerable moment. Diane's willingness to show her aging body on screen was a revolutionary act in an industry obsessed with youth. She became a spokesperson for aging gracefully, or rather, aging authentically. She refused plastic surgery, opting instead to let the lines on her face tell the story of a life well lived. In the years that followed, she became a fashion icon all over again. This time for a younger generation who admired her Instagram-ready aesthetic of high fashion mixed with thrift store finds. Beyond the screen, Diane's life is a masterclass in curiosity. She has published several books, including her best-selling memoir, Then Again, which is a beautiful dual narrative of her life and her mother's journals. The book revealed the depth of her struggle with bulimia in her early years, a secret she had kept hidden for decades. By sharing her flaws and her unbelievable internal battles, she humanized the legend. She also became a prolific author of coffee table books on California architecture and the art of the house, showing a level of expertise that goes far beyond a hobby.
She was also a self-described dabbler who has tried her hand at everything from singing to winemaking. Her wine, the Keaton, is meant to be served over ice because she liked it that way. This refusal to take herself too seriously was perhaps her most endearing trait. In interviews, she was famously deflective, often turning the questions back on the interviewer or descending into fits of self-deprecating laughter. She was one of the few celebrities who truly felt like a real person, someone who got flustered, who forgot names, and who genuinely found the world a strange and wonderful place. Diane Keaton passed away on October 11, 2025, at the age of 79 from pneumonia. She is survived by her two children, Dexter and Duke. Even in her final years, she showed no signs of slowing down. She continued to work, choosing projects that allowed her to play with her persona and have fun. But her real legacy isn't in her filmography. It's in the permission she gave to women everywhere to be themselves. She proved that you don't have to fit into a box to be successful, that you don't need a partner to be whole.
Diane Keaton's life story is unbelievable not because of scandal or tragedy, but because of its consistency. She has remained Diane Hall from Santa Ana through every decade, every boyfriend, and every award. She is a woman who looked at the Hollywood blueprint and decided to draw her own. She taught us that the most beautiful thing a person can be is a work in progress, and that life, much like a great film, is all about the lighting, the perspective, and the courage to keep the camera rolling even when the script is unwritten.
There is a certain poetry in the fact that Diane never married. When asked about it, she would often say that she thinks she missed out on that exchange of life with a partner, but she doesn't say it with regret. She said it with the observation of a photographer looking at a scene she chose not to shoot. She has had the great loves, Alan, Pacino, Beatty, and she has her children, her houses, and her work. Her life was full, not because it followed the rules, but because it was built, brick by brick, according to her own unique vision. In the end, Diane Keaton had been our most charming enigma. She was the girl in the tie, the mother who started at 50, the actress who made us laugh until we cried, and the woman who reminded us that la-di-da is more than just a catchphrase. It's a philosophy. It's the sound of someone who knows that life is messy, complicated, and often absurd, but if you're wearing a good hat and have a sense of humor, you're going to be just fine.